When Germany surrendered in November 1918, the Kaiser Wilhelm II, abdicated and fled the country. This meant that a new constitutional German Republic, or democratic Germany, was needed to be established. And that is what happened. A man named Ebert became the leader of the new German Republic because he was the leader of the largest party in the Reichstag. And if you remember, the Reichstag is that central government. A new constitution, so rules of government, were drawn up quickly, which made Germany much more democratic than under the Kaiser's rule. If you remember that the Kaiser's rule was very authoritarian, meaning that he had ultimate power. Now, the powers of this new constitution were separated into the president, who's the head of state, the chancellor, the prime minister, Reichstag, the parliament, and the people, the electorate, so the people who voted. The president was elected by the people every 7 years. The chancellor was chosen from the Reichstag by the president, but must have and must keep Reichstag support. The Reichstag was elected by the people through proportional representation, meaning that each party got the same proportion of seats as they got votes. And the people, the electorate, all Germans over the age of 21, were able to vote for the president and members of the Reichstag. Now, one exception to these democratic principles was Article 48. This said that, in a crisis, the president could rule the country directly using emergency powers. Now, this proved to be very important in later years, as it is this article which allowed people such as Hitler to take over and become all-powerful. The new government faced political chaos and was further damaged by the Treaty of Versailles itself. With a new system of government, dissatisfied soldiers returning home, and new political parties emerging, it's not surprising that there was political unrest. Each group wanted to seize this opportunity to gain control. Ebert's government crushed a right-wing revolt on the 6th of December in 1918 and a left-wing communist revolt on the 5th of January 1919. Amid this chaos, there was free elections on January the 19th, 1919, and Ebert became president officially on the 11th of February. The new government met in Weimar because Berlin was considered too unstable with the revolts continuing. The government became known as the Weimar Republic. A further crisis came when Ebert's government had to sign the Treaty of Versailles in June 1919. It weakened his government because its opponents always blamed it for the problems caused by the treaty. The war defeat had damaged German pride at its core. The Treaty of Versailles made it even worse because it blamed Germany for the war. The German people really resented that war guilt. So let's just quickly think about the economic problems faced by Germany from 1919 to 1923. The major one of these was hyperinflation. Because of the war, many of Germany's traditional industries were weak. We did look at the idea that many of the industries of production in Germany have been turned to help the war effort and help make machinery for war. So after the war, that was no longer needed. Germany's pre-war international trade had also disappeared. It was difficult to re-establish trading links at a time when industry was so weak, and Germany was being blamed for the war. To make matters worse, under the Treaty of Versailles, Germany was forced to agree to pay reparations, which was the compensation for war damage, of about £6.6 billion to the victorious countries. And we did look previously at the distribution of that, saying that France got the majority of that money. Now, the first instalment of this repayment was to be paid in 1921, but nothing was actually paid until 1922. And so in January 1923, French and Belgian troops entered the Ruhr, which was an industrial area of Germany, to seize raw materials and goods as an alternative to the unpaid reparations. Because of this, German workers went on strike in protest against the occupation of the Ruhr, and factory production collapsed. The government was running out of money, and so it printed more. Hyperinflation followed. Prices rose so quickly that banknotes and savings became worthless. Those on fixed incomes suffered badly. Hyperinflation damaged the reputation of the Weimar Republic, particularly among the middle classes, whose wealth had been wiped out. Here is one of the images which shows the worthlessness of the German mark. You can see children playing with bundles of what is, in actual fact, millions upon millions of marks, and they're actually using them as toy blocks to build structures with. This shows the absolute worthlessness of the currency at the time. And in this image here, we can see a woman actually burning the currency, burning the paper German mark in order to fuel her stove, again showing the level of worthlessness of the paper money, that it only had a worth in being burnt for warmth and to heat food.
So I'm going to plan my answer to the question, why did people turn to extremist groups in Germany? Now, the first thing I need to do is establish my answer the question sentence. Now, remember, this sentence isn't going to be specific, it's going to introduce the overall reason. So after reviewing our information today, I think we could all agree that the reason people turned towards these extremist groups was due to a lack of faith in the Weimar Republic. So you could reword this as saying they thought that the Weimar Republic was too weak, that they didn't think it was doing a good job, or in any other way. And then in your point, evidence, explanation and link, you're going to expand this further. So I know that I'm going to be planning a Peel sentence, P-E-E-L. So for this, I'm going to actually use the point that we discussed quite a bit in the lesson, and my point is going to be about hyperinflation. So from our learning, we know that when hyperinflation occurred, it made the Weimar Republic look very weak in the eyes of people. And so I might include that in here and just say that it made the people doubt the Republic. And then I need to actually move on to my evidence. So this is going to be my cold hard facts. So I'm going to be discussing that in 1923 there was an invasion of the Ruhr because Germany could not keep up with the reparation payments. And if you want to go back to have a listen to that explanation again, please feel free to. So from that evidence, I'm going to be talking about how hyperinflation occurred because the government printed more money. Now this obviously links really well into my explanation. So when I'm talking about the printing of more money, equaled a loss of value. The more money that got printed, the less it was worth. This idea that there's only a finite amount of worth, and the more that we separate that, makes each paper mark worth less. It's a lot like just fractions if you think about it. If you have one whole of something, that's obviously worth a lot more than 1/100th of something. Now, I need to also think about the people, because that is what the question's asking me. So I'm thinking about the fact that people lost a lot of money and many people struggled. And then I need to link it back to the question. I've said, why do people turn towards extremist groups? I've talked about a lack of faith in the Weimar Republic. My point is that hyperinflation made people doubt the Weimar Republic. My evidence is the hyperinflation in 1923, when Germany failed to pay the reparations, and you had the invasion of the Ruhr. As a result, hyperinflation occurred when we printed more money. My explanation of that printing more money gave a loss of value and people struggled. So I'm going to link this idea of struggling to the actual question. People struggled, so they turn towards extreme groups for answers. So we think about the idea that lots of these people saw these extremist groups, like these extreme socialist groups and the communist groups, as having the answer to the problem of hyperinflation, and that essentially these people were desperate and so were turning to more extremist groups.